All right, so you want to get a handle on what software engineering looks like in 2025,
Yeah.
and we've got
Lots to cover.
yeah, we've got a guide for like future software engineers and a whole bunch
Wow.
of industry reports and stuff. And
Hmm.
the goal is to give you like the need to know info on the job market,
Right.
the new tech, and the skills that you need fast. Yeah,
Fast, yeah.
let's just get right into it. So one thing that kind of jumped out at me right away is how these reports show a job market that seems pretty steady, but also there's a lot of changes happening underneath.
Yeah, definitely. There are some like cyclical patterns, especially around hiring.
Yeah.
We tend to see peaks in October and January. And like at the beginning of 2025, we saw a pretty good rebound in postings.
Hmm.
So that suggests that things are kind of returning to a stable pace after, the end of year slowdown that we usually see.
Okay, so overall kind of steady,
Yeah.
but it's not like that everywhere. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, yeah, California still has the most job openings for sure, but in February there was a bit of a dip.
Oh, wow.
Texas held pretty steady, and then this is a surprise. Hawaii actually showed some growth, which might be because of like remote work and some specific tech investments happening there.
Interesting.
Washington, which you'd think of as a big hub, actually saw the biggest drop, probably due to restructuring in some companies.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's not just like where the jobs are,
Right.
but why they might be changing in
Oh,
those places.
please.
Like there are other things going on there. And of course, we have to talk about AI coding tools.
Of course.
This is like the big thing, right?
Yeah, it's really changing things. Like with tools like GitHub Copilot that can handle a lot of the basic coding tasks,
Mm.
the demand is shifting more towards engineers who can like work with those AI tools, design those complex systems and
Ooh.
solve problems across different areas. And this is especially impacting those who are entering the field, in those mid-level roles.
Yeah. So how do you see those engineers adapting? What skills do they need?
Well, definitely those data-focused skills like Python and SQL, those are always in high demand. And then like the non-technical stuff,
Yeah.
collaboration, problem solving, communication, agile methodologies, all that is super important. And one thing that's interesting is that we're seeing less emphasis on roles that are just front end focused.
Okay.
Full stack or specialized back end skills seem to be more valuable now.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think front end is going away, but the expectation now is to have a wider range of skills.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, one thing I noticed in these reports is that there were some pretty different views on like the overall size of the job market.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's interesting, right? Some data suggested things were stable,
Yeah.
but other sources are pointing towards a pretty significant contraction in 2025,
Wow.
like potentially hitting a 5-year low. And the reasons for that could be an increase in outsourcing to regions where costs are lower. And also just like market saturation, there's a lot of new graduates and, unfortunately, some layoffs happening.
So for job seekers out there,
Yeah.
what do you think this means for them?
Well, I think it means that there's going to be more competition, especially for those who are just starting out, and, potentially some pressure on salaries to go down a bit.
Okay.
People might need to look beyond the traditional HIMSS for opportunities, like maybe consider Australia
Yeah.
or Asia, Europe, and also really focus on learning those AI tools and new technologies. That's going to be key.
And it's important to remember this is all happening within like a bigger picture of the economy and how it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. We're expecting to see those layoffs continue in the tech sector, even though there's been some hiring.
Right.
AI and cybersecurity are still the driving forces. They're creating jobs, but also changing what those jobs look like.
Mm.
And then, the remote versus in-office debate is still going on. And there's a real focus on things like analytical thinking and silent hiring, which is basically where companies are upskilling their existing employees instead of hiring new ones.
Okay, so let's get into the specific technologies like AI and machine learning.
Yes.
It's amazing how much they're changing things, right?
It's incredible. I mean, these systems are becoming more and more autonomous.
Yeah.
They're able to learn and adapt on their own. AI is being integrated into so many applications, automating tasks, making things work better.
Hmm.
We're going to see a lot of job growth in that area of AI integration for sure. And then there's this rise of agent AI, where systems are more proactive, more strategic.
Oh, interesting.
And thankfully, those advanced AI tools are becoming easier to access
Yeah.
thanks to things like large language models and better software.
That's great.
So it's becoming a lot more democratized.
And cloud computing, is that still as big as it was?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's still revolutionizing how we develop software, how we deploy it, how we manage it.
Hmm.
Cloud spending globally is still going up. Most companies are using a mix of different cloud platforms. It's called hybrid and multi-cloud.
Okay.
And we're seeing some really cool developments in areas like quantum computing.
Yeah, quantum computing, that's still pretty early stages, right?
Yeah, it's not widely used yet, but
Sure.
it's definitely where things are headed. There's also a big push for sustainability in the cloud, and things like edge computing and serverless computing are becoming really popular. So anyone who has expertise in those cloud services, especially serverless and containerization,
Hmm.
that's where the demand is for sure.
Okay. And we can't forget about cybersecurity.
Absolutely not. It's more important than ever. The
Yeah.
demand for cybersecurity professionals is huge because there just aren't enough people with those skills.
Obviously.
And the threats are constantly evolving, from ransomware to state-sponsored attacks, even attacks driven by AI. It's really vital that all software engineers have at least a basic understanding of security principles and tools,
Yeah.
skills in things like network security, cloud security, risk management. Those are really valuable.
Makes sense. And, we talk about data a lot, but it really seems like data is at the center of everything these days.
It really is. We're seeing the emergence of what they call the data-driven enterprise, where data is central to how companies operate and make decisions.
Hmm.
And the need for data scientists, big data analysts, that's only going to keep growing across pretty much every industry.
Okay.
So those skills like statistics, programming languages like Python and R and machine learning, those are essential.
Okay. Now, with all these new things coming up, web development, is that still relevant?
Oh, it's totally fundamental. Both front end and back end technologies are constantly evolving, with new frameworks and tools.
Yeah.
APIs are also really important. And full stack developers who can handle both sides of the equation, especially those who know cloud deployment,
Hmm.
those are in high demand.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, but what about some of those emerging technologies that are maybe not as mainstream yet, like blockchain and IoT?
Right. So blockchain, it's offering these decentralized systems with a lot of potential applications beyond just cryptocurrencies.
Yep.
The demand for blockchain developers is definitely growing. And then the Internet of Things, that's just exploding, connecting devices, generating huge amounts of data.
Yeah.
And some of the key trends there are things like AI integration within those IoT devices and edge processing, which basically means processing data closer to where it's collected.
Interesting.
So that means there's going to be a growing need for IoT developers who have those skills.
Well, I mean, it's clear that all of these areas are really interconnected.
Yeah,
I mean, AI relies on the cloud. It generates data that needs to be secured and analyzed.
definitely.
It makes you think, like, out of all of this stuff that's changing so rapidly,
Mhm.
which area really sparks your interest the most?
Yeah.
Maybe that's something worth thinking about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.